Happy New Year! 2025. I'm filming this on January 1st. Did this last year, so I'm going to do it again. This is everything that I read in 2024. Here are all the beautiful books that I read this year. I will be giving my brief thoughts on each of them, so stick around. I hope you guys all had a wonderful year. Mine was really good, apart from, you know, a little few ups and downs. Lost my lovely cat Wolfie, which was pretty awful, but we move. Now, if you watched my video from last year, you'll know that I set myself a goal of 12 books, one a month, and I managed to read 40, which is insane for me. So I set myself the same goal this year, just 12 books, one a month, and I read 11. I missed the goal by one. But I was in a huge reading slump the beginning half of the year. Then I was just incredibly busy after the summer holidays. This first term of my second year at drama school has been the busiest and most tiring. Once again, I am doing the spread eagle to film this video because this is where I would be if I didn't. So we'll begin with my first read of the year, which was Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief by Rick Riordan. Now, surprisingly, I have never read the Percy Jackson series. I tried to when I was in primary school, but I just could never get into it. I'd read a couple pages and then just have to read again and again and again. I never got past the first few pages. But we had the Disney Plus series coming out, and I thought now is the perfect time to give the books a go. I watched the film a lot when I was younger, and I really love it. And I didn't understand why it got so much hate from the Percy Jackson fan base. Reading the book now, I get it, because the film is not accurate at all. But if you separate it from the book, it's a really great film. My issue with the show is that it is very accurate, but it's not that great. Whereas the film is not that accurate, but really great. Now to the book. I really loved it. I don't know what I was expecting going into it. Everything was like, oh, it's different from the film. All this is different from the film. And I'm like, just don't think about the film. And I was sort of reading along with the show. So I'd read a certain amount of chapters and then watch the corresponding episode as it came out. So it was nice to see all the things I'd imagined like coming to life and seeing how different it had been interpreted in my brain. I didn't know how I was going to feel about the ages of the characters because they're about 12. And as an almost 22-year-old, I'm like, I don't know if I want to read about kids going around doing stuff. That's boring. I'm an adult. I want to read about adults. But it didn't bother me at all. I was like, these kids are cool. They're great. They're living their life. They're doing their stuff. I'm going to be honest. I read this at the beginning of the year. I don't remember much about it or how I felt reading it. But I do remember really enjoying it and going, I want to read Sea of Monsters now. But I think I am going to wait for series 2 of the show just to get that experience again. The next book I read was The Song of Achilles by Madeline Miller. Oh my god. I picked up this copy in a charity shop ages ago. She's a bit worn, but that's okay. We love her. She does the job. Has been on my TBR for a long time because obviously I've heard so much about it, but often a lot of time like BookTok, you know, overhypes books and they turn out to be awful, and so I was worried about it, but it lives up to the hype. It's such a good read, so much so that I got my mum to read it as well and she really enjoyed it. She's a lot more well versed on like Greek mythology than I am. I know a bit, but I'm not very familiar with the stories of Achilles and Patroclus. Patroclus? Come on, Sam. Read the book. You should know his name. Patroclus. Patroclus. We're going with Patroclus. Did I cry reading this book? Of course I did, because I'm a wetty. I really just enjoyed the intimacy of their relationship and how Patroclus would speak about Achilles and describe him as this ethereal being. Like, this book sort of felt like a warm blanket with just the security that these two boys felt around each other, and you get to see them growing up together as well. Is a lovely little journey. I don't know why it gives me the vibe of like, this should be boring. The way it's written and the events that happen, I'm like, oh, I would be bored of this, but I wasn't. Listen, if it's gay, I'm probably gonna like it. That's definitely not true, but if it's gay, I'm interested. I'm gonna pick it up and give it a go. The next book I will be talking about is the second Bridgerton book, The Viscount Who Loved Me, by Julia Quinn. I was really excited for this because I love Kate and Anthony in the show. Obviously it's different. Kate has a different background, which changes like not a whole lot, but it changes kind of the dynamics. It's very enemies to lovers, which I enjoy. And I'm also going to be honest, I don't remember a lot about this book. I don't know how they get from A to B. I just know that they get there. I wasn't super into this book reading it. Like, it's good, it's all right. It's kind of how I felt about the first book as well. Like, it's a fun read, it's fine. But it's not got me, you know, at the edge of my seat, like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? The show does. Kate and Anthony is so well done in the show. I was a bit disappointed in the book. Who knows how I would have felt if I'd read it the other way around. This fucking book. Oh my god. Oh my god. This is the Rise. What's the fuck is it called? Rise of the School for Good and Evil by Soman Shinani. I have read now 7 of these books. In my video last year, I spoke about the first 6 books that I read. And then there's 2 prequels, and I've read the first prequel. It took me a long time to finish this. It's dull. Like, it's not horrible. It's just I'm reading it and I'm like, I could be doing so many other things right now. I think I have the same opinions as I had about the first 6 books. There is a lot going on. There are a lot of characters, a lot of plot lines, a lot going on. I get so confused so easily. It is just a big mishmash of fairy tales. And basically the whole time everyone was trying to work out, am I good? Am I evil? And then I thought, you know, the consensus we'd come to was like, we don't know. Like there's a mix of good and evil in everyone. But no, these are prequels, so we haven't reached that bit yet. I think the thing is I just don't care. I don't care about the outcome of these characters. I don't care about these brothers and where they're going to end up, because we know where they're going to end up now because I've read 6 books of where they're going to end up. These are targeted towards younger readers, like age like 10 to 12 or something, so maybe that's just why I don't completely vibe with it, but they just feel so long. This is like one of the shortest books in the series. Like, look at the size of this one. Huge. I've read 6 of these. I will probably read the last book this year, but I'm not looking forward to it. It's sort of just like I need to get through this now. But Sam, you don't have to read it. Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I've started, so I'll finish. Okay? It's a bloody mastermind question. I have to finish. I'm not a quitter. This is just a little novella that I banged out in a day because I was like, gotta get my reading total up, which is Carmilla by J. Sheridan Le Fanu. I think we're learning from this video. I don't know how to pronounce names. The interesting thing about this is the novella that inspired Dracula, or like was an inspiration to Dracula. And it was written over 20 years before Dracula. And it's about the Countess Carmilla Karnstein, who is a lesbian vampire. A lesbian vampire in the 1870s? What? Yes, you heard it here first, folks. Whilst it's not like explicitly lesbian, you know it's lesbian. Like it's classic gothic lesbian vampires. You know, yeah, classic lesbian vampires, as we all know. It's very short. It is a novella, so I did sit and bang out in one day. It's not my favorite thing that I've ever read. I was quite bored, like the whole time. And I didn't really know what was going on. Because it is 1870s, the style of the writing and the language that's used is reflective of that time. And so it's not very gripping. The reason I wanted to read this is because I have been a fan of the YouTube show Carmilla for many, many years. And I thought, yeah, might as well read the inspiration. Very loosely based off of this book. Very loosely. But like you can see the elements, like character names and character traits and things that might happen. The show is much better than this book. But without this book, there would have been no show. So, you know, credit where credit's due. This was a very, like, I would say, even though I don't really know much about it, I would imagine it was a bit of a revolutionary thing. Inspired Dracula, lesbians, subtle lesbians. Speaking of gay vampires, let me introduce you to my obsession of 2024. Interview with a Vampire. To say I am obsessed with this series is an understatement. It is my, I don't know if it's a hyperfixation or a special interest. I find it hard to discern between that. But when I started watching the show this year, I just fell in love and I knew I had to read the books. So that's what I did. There's like at least like 13 books in the Vampire Chronicles. And I was like, Jesus Christ. But I started with, obviously, Interview with a Vampire by Miss Anne Rice, R.I.P. This book, I was expecting a lot because I love the show so much. And the show is so beautifully written. Like the language, the dialogue in it is so stunning. Like it's genuinely just one of the best pieces of media that I've ever seen. The writers are incredible. The showrunner, Roland Jones, like the acting, the scene, the sets, the costume. Oh my God, the music by Daniel Hart. I could make an entire separate video just gushing over this show. I love it so much. So I was expecting big things from this book. And it's good. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't this huge explosion of awesomeness that I was expecting. Why did I choose those words? Who knows? If you don't know, the story is about a vampire who gets interviewed. There you go. That's all you need to know. No, Louis de Pointe-de-Lac, and he's being interviewed by this guy in the 80s in San Francisco, and he's telling about his life of how he came to be a vampire in the 1700s New Orleans. And he meets Lestat de Lioncourt. I found myself getting distracted. I get distracted very easily. I do that thing a lot where you read a page and then you realize you haven't read the page at all. I do that quite often. But I was doing this for like every single page, so I just feel like I didn't take any of it in. The second half, when we get to Paris, I really got into it. I really got into it then. But the first half, when they're in New Orleans, I feel like I can't remember it. I get flashes occasionally of what went down. The story itself is so cool and so sad as well, because it is like based off of Anne Rice's life. The vampire Claudia is only 5 years old, and her tragic tale of being stuck in a 5-year-old's body when she gets to like 20, 50, it's so heartbreaking. She's this grown woman trapped in a child's body. She can't experience the things that she wants to experience, that a woman should experience. And it's heartbreaking. And even more heartbreaking when you realize that Anne Rice did lose a child at that age. And she's based that off of this. She herself sees her as Louis and her husband as Lestat. So yeah, it's pretty sad. Whilst not explicitly gay, come on guys. These guys are in love. And if you don't think by the end of this book, you definitely think by the end of the second. That's what I love about the show, is that they did what the movie was too cowardly to do. They made them gay. I mean, Lestat is non-discriminating, but you know. Anne Rice loves to use the word preternatural. Oh my god, if I took a shot every time she used it in just these 2 first books, I would be dead in a ditch. But don't get me wrong, Anne Rice is a really, really great writer. Like, the world that she builds and her use of language is so mature and developed, and probably too mature and developed for my little tiny brain to understand. So a lot of the time I'm like, what is going on? I'm just like, I'm too unworthy to know what's going on here. But this book is definitely worth a read, if only to get to the second book. Oh, the Vampire Lestat. Oh my god. So there was 9 years between Anne Rice releasing Interview with the Vampire and The Vampire Lestat. So the character of Lestat changes quite drastically between them, because she sort of fell in love with him and it's just made him this badass rock star. So the beginning and the end, it's sort of like bookends with rock star Lestat in modern day, which at the time was like 1980s. He like rises from the earth and it's like, I'm gonna be a rock star. Now, I don't want to say too much because there's like, you know, spoilers involved, but the rest of this book, and she's chonky, is about Lestat's life from being human in his little French town, castle, he lives in a castle, to coming to Paris with Nikki, getting turned into a vampire, that whole debacle in Paris, founding the Theatre of Vampires, then traveling around the world. It's a whole thing. It is a saga. It feels like this epic journey that you go on. And then at the end, there's about 100 pages of just lore, of just straight lore. Lestat is talking to someone who is like, let me tell you the story of how I came to be. And then in his story, he talks to a guy that says, now let me tell you the story of how this came to be. So we are being told by Lestat a story that is being told by this guy of a story that is being told by this guy. Like, that is storyception. But it works. It's just a lot of lore and you learn a lot. It's genuinely 100 pages of sit down, Lestat, I'm going to tell you this. And then 100 pages later, it's like, huh, okay, cool. Don't know what to do with that now. So it's just so brilliant in this book, and you see a different side because you've got the epilogue, which is Lestat telling the events of Interview with a Vampire from his point of view. And he's like, I get why Louis said those things about me. I get why he felt that way. But also, I loved him, and I loved Claudia. And he just makes himself out to seem like this really just like sentimental, vulnerable guy. And you sort of see a different perspective to Lestat throughout this whole thing. Everything kind of makes sense. And then the end is so crazy. Rockstar Lestat, there's a concert, there's explosions. It's wild. I will be reading as much of the rest of this series as my brain can handle because they're chunky and they're really heavy on the brain, but so good. This book is so good. You finish a chapter and you're like, whoa, my god. I am so excited to see what they do with this for season 3. Oh my god. As I was reading this, just imagining what it's gonna look like on screen. Oh my god, so cool! There's a huge scene with like Wicca people and like sacrifices, and I'm so excited. I think this was my favorite read of the year. It was also my last read of the year. I finished it on New Year's Eve because I was rushing to get it done so I can put it in this video. A lot to get through, but it is so worth it. This is What She Does Next Will Astound You by James Goss, which is based on the Doctor Who spin-off show Class. They did 3 books. I've read all 3 now. This was the last one to read, and oh, it was disappointing. The first one, Joyride, was so good. The second one was kind of meh, which I spoke about, I think, in my video last year. And this one was just, such a drag. It was so badly written, and it was so dull. The characterization was just not there at all. It feels like it was written by someone who's trying to understand teenagers that really just doesn't understand teenagers. Just was not interested. I was not interested in how they were going to get out of this. I didn't care. I was confused. Not much to say, really. It was a drag to get through. Like, there was loads of references in there that just didn't make sense. Like, at one point they made a reference to be like, just got rickrolled because there was a joke. I'm like, that's not what rickrolling is. Rickrolling is when you play Never Gonna Give You Up. It's not just any old joke or prank. That's not how you rickroll, James Goss. How old is James Goss? I want to know. He's definitely not a teenager. There were parts where it kind of picked up and I was like, okay, maybe I misjudged it. Maybe it was taking his time to get into it. And then it would just sink back down again. It was like this like real life laser quest thing where they were training to defeat monsters, but there was like kind of like a charity thing going on, and people were doing challenges and really hurting themselves, and they were being kidnapped, and it was just a whole thing going on, and I didn't understand, and I didn't want to understand, and I did not enjoy it. Also, April was kind of the main character, April and Ram, and I hate them. They're so annoying. The only people I watch Class for are Miss Quill, Charlie, and Matesh. The others can choke. I'm sorry. They're just so annoying. Staying in the Doctor Who vein, I read The Glamour Chase by Gary Russell. I have a lot of Doctor Who books on my Doctor Who shelf, which maybe I'll do a tour of one day. But I picked this one because it's not too big. It is 11th Doctor era with Amy and Rory, my favourite combination. This story was a little confusing at times, but not too bad. It's set in Norfolk, and the Doctor said he loves Norfolk, which gives it bonus points because I'm a Norfolk boy. But it was about like these aliens that crash landed thousands and thousands of years ago, and they're like these wool creatures, like they are like wool, but they can like become other textures or something. I think the characterization was pretty accurate. I can see why this was a book, because I think on screen it would be more difficult to do. That's the good thing about Doctor Who books, is you can do more of those outlandish ideas. Although not with the bloody Disney Plus budget they got going on now. Jesus. You know I had to do it on. Breaking Dawn. This is a reread. She's chunky, but I did it. I have yet to read Midnight Sun or Life and Death, and yet I keep reading these books. I'm not ashamed to say I love the Twilight books. I love reading them. And I used to say, like, they're not very well written, but they're fun. But I read them now and I'm like, fuck it, I love these. I think they're well written. There are problems with the Twilight series. You know, I'm not gonna discount that. 12-year-old me loved them, and almost 22-year-old me still loves them. 10 years later, like, I can't help it. Breaking Dawn is chunky and there's a lot to get through, but it just fills me with this lovely warmth, and it's a nice change up from the other books because you get Vampire Bella. There's a lot of lore dropped, a lot of new vampires introduced. You get all the covens coming in. Very cool. The final book on this list that I read in 2024 is Lily Alone by Jacqueline Wilson. I'm going back to my roots. I actually haven't read a crazy amount of Jacqueline Wilson books, and this one I've actually never read. I used to audiobook it as a child. For about 10 years, I used to go to sleep every night listening to an audiobook. Lily Alone was one of my favourite ones. It was read by Jacqueline Wilson, and I just loved the idea of this. Like, you know when you're a kid and the idea of running away seems so appealing, you're like, I could do it. I could do it. I could find food. I could find shelter. And then you're an adult and you're like, oh my God, that sounds awful. Why did I want to do that as a kid? But in this, it's a story about Lily and her 3 younger siblings. Her mum goes off with some guy on holiday thinking she's leaving them with their stepdad, but in reality, he never makes it. And Lily's like, right, I know I'm 11, but I'm going to take care of these kids for a week. And that's what she does. And it doesn't end up very well. But there's just something really comforting about it. I think it's the nostalgic element for me as well. But when I was a kid, it was very comforting. You know, family, they're sticking together, they're looking after each other. They hide out in this park and they sleep inside a tree. And the idea of sleeping inside a tree for me when I was a kid was just like the best thing ever. I was like, I have to do this. Um, Obviously, I never have because that would be awful. I did read along with the Jacqueline Wilson audiobook, so I had that lovely nostalgic feeling again. Honestly, it's a great book. I stand by it today. I still love it. I think it's my favourite Jacqueline Wilson book, even though I haven't read a lot of them. I also loved Four Children in It growing up, which I might reread as well. Even though it's a like blatant rip-off of Five Children in It. I don't know how she got away with that. But we stand Jacqueline Wilson. She's an icon. And I love this book. So there we have it. That is my reading roundup of 2024. I hope you had a good year. I hope you got lots of reading in. And if you didn't, that's okay. Already started my new book of the year. I started reading The Maze Runner. Why did I do that? Why have I committed to reading The Maze Runner again when I have like literally hundreds of unread books on all these shelves that you can't see? I hope you enjoyed this video. It's a little chaotic because I don't really plan these if you couldn't tell. I will see you for more videos in 2025. Feel free to subscribe. This year has been so cool for me. Like my first full year of being a YouTuber that earns money. Like I earn money from this and I find that wild. Every view, every like, every comment genuinely means so much to me. Not only does it get me money, which is always nice, but it's just so cool to like build a little community of people. Even if a lot of people aren't here for my talking videos, they're here for like the quizzes, which is fair enough. But the people that are here for the talking, thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. I've had a lot of fun, and I'm hopefully gonna get more videos out this year. Although I am in my second year of drama school, so busy time. We'll see. I'm gonna stop talking now, and I'll see you soon, sometime in the future. Have a good year. I'll see you. And bye.